Good evening, everyone. My name is Jess, and I am a Drought Adoption Officer with Local Land Services Drought Adoption Officer Program, and I will be facilitating the session tonight. This webinar is brought to you by the Drought Adoption Officer Program, and the Drought Adoption Officer Program has received funding from the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund through the Southern New South Wales Innovation Hub and the Southern Queensland Northern New South Wales Hub. I'd like to start tonight by saying that Local Land Services acknowledges that it stands on country which always was and always will be Aboriginal land. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and waters, and we show our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We are committed to providing places in which Aboriginal people are included socially, culturally, and economically through thoughtful and collaborative approaches to our work. Before we get started tonight, I wanted to highlight some key housekeeping to make sure that our webinar this evening goes as smoothly as possible. We would encourage everyone for the best viewing experience to join via a desktop computer. This session will be recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel to view after tonight's webinar. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function at any time, and we will either address your questions as they come or add to it at the end, or as the presenters would like to. We will have a slide at the end of today's presentations, which will be our post-event survey. This will be a QR code that we really encourage you to scan with your mobile device and complete, because this obviously helps us improve our sessions and develop and deliver content that you would all like to see. I'm going to hand over now to the climate applications team. I believe, Kim, you will be kicking off. I will stop sharing and I'll let you take it away.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jess. We'll just let our PowerPoint slides kick in.
Yeah, just let me know, Kim, that we're good.
Yeah, I've got that. Hang on, I've just got to find us. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thanks to Jess and the LLS Drought Adoption Officer Program for the invite. On the webinar tonight, we have Kel Langfield. So Kel's a Seasonal Conditions Officer based up in Wollongbar. We also have Dr. Jen Wurtzel. She's a Research Officer with the Climate Applications team, as am I. So Kim Broadfoot with the Seasonal Conditions Officer. We're both based in Orange. And we also have online tonight for any more questions as well, our leader, Dr. Anthony Clark. So just a bit of an overview. So our program is responsible for monitoring and reporting on drought and seasonal conditions for New South Wales. We do it in a number of ways, which will run through tonight. You have the whole team on this evening, so please take the opportunity to ask questions. Where we can't answer tonight, we'll make sure to get that information out to you. So during the webinar tonight, we will look at the systems and processes that have been developed by the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development to monitor seasonal conditions in New South Wales. We'll be providing some of the background into those systems and the tools that are available for you to use. We'll also provide you with a current update on current seasonal conditions and also look at our new Drought Forecast product. And to tie it all together at the end, we'll just run through how you can use some of the tools and products to help you with your on-farm decision making. Okay, so over to who we are and what we do. So our program is responsible for monitoring and reporting on drought and those seasonal conditions in New South Wales. Our role was established in 2013 in response to a national drought policy recommendations on that move away from drought declarations and exceptional circumstances. So while drought declarations are no longer made by New South Wales Government, we know it's still really important to have this, role in the development and delivery of climate information to the agriculture sector. In 2018, there was an internal review on the seasonal conditions reporting. One of the findings was that, government needed a more automated and staged approach to reporting seasonal conditions. And the outcome of this was the development of our product, the Enhanced Drought Information System, or EDIS. So this project looks at tracking all phases of drought from from drought to production recovery. So firstly, we're just going to run through how our drought monitoring system works. So the Enhanced Drought Information System, or EDIS, we'll also be referring to it as, is a fully automated data analytics and deployment system that sources and integrates climate and remote sensing data from a range of sources. So basically it takes a large range of inputs, being climate, soil and water data from various sources. It processes them daily through an agricultural model and a series of algorithms that calculate individual drought indicators. This data is then translated into usable outputs that you see. And we'll be running through some of those outputs tonight. One of the outputs includes the New South Wales Combined Drought Indicator Map, or the drought maps, as lots of people know them as, which is shown here on the screen. So what climate data do we use for our EDIS? So in its rawest form, the data is underpinned by the National Climate Station Network, maintained by the Bureau of Meteorology. So it's a network of manual and automatic weather stations. They undergo rigorous quality checks, both in the field and in the data processing stage. This map is a distribution of where those stations are across the state. There's certainly a few things to note here. Firstly, the sparsity increases from east to west. Also, not all the dots are currently operational. So there has been a bit of a decline in the operational stations over the last 20 years. We're not talking about the detail about a current project that we do have at the moment, but we are looking at research into expanding the data we access, specifically looking at how we can integrate third-party climate data into our processes. Our system, however, it doesn't use this raw data. So our primary input for our EDIS system is called ANU Climate. So this product was developed by our collaborators at the Australian National University. So ANU Climate is essentially a very sophisticated interpolation of the Bureau's station data to a 1 kilometre gridded resolution. So it takes into account topography, it uses historical data, and it has its own quality controls on that data. ANU Climate is available Australia-wide. It's generated daily, and it goes back to the 1970s. DPI is a custodian of the near real-time feed of ANU Climate, processing a suite of daily climate variables, temperature, rainfall, those sorts of things. Here I'm showing a rough plot of the minimum temperature at that 1 kilometre native resolution on the left, while the right is one of the prettier versions that we use in our reporting each month. So those daily climate fields are then run through a water balance and pasture growth model to output daily soil, water and plant growth potential. So the daily rain, soil, water and pasture growth are aggregated to 12-month windows and percentile ranked to produce 3 drought indicators and a directional index. So when we're talking about percentile ranking, what we are doing is we're comparing this 365-day period to all other 360-day periods in the historical records and ranking them from 1 to 0. 1's the lowest, 100's the highest, 50's the median. The rainfall, soil, water and plant growth indices are designed to capture different types of drought. Different types of drought impact, including hydrological and agronomic deficiencies, not just looking at rainfall deficits. So what we're trying to capture in the system is effective rainfall. Has the rainfall been effective to help soil, water and pasture growth? So we combine these indicators with a drought direction to come up with the drought maps that you see, the combined drought indicator. So there's rules that relate to what colours on the map that you'll see. And this is a decision framework that corresponds to those colours. So starting with the drought categories, we categorize an area as drought affected as soon as any of the indicators, so any of those 3 indicators, fall below the 30th percentile, so the 30th lowest records on history. So moving to drought, so drought is classified as when any of these indicators fall below the 5th percentile, and intense drought is when all of those indicators fall below the 5th percentile. Flipping it back, so recovery is when all the indicators have recovered above the 30th percentile, but less than the 50th, so less than median. So they haven't achieved that, median conditions yet. And non-drought is when they're all, performing above that median level. A couple of things to note, the CDI tracks the long-term conditions across New South Wales, so over 12 months. Because of this, it does have a time lag and it can be a bit delayed in tracking drought onset. It can feel like it's not responding quickly to on-ground conditions, so what you might be seeing on your farms, because it is tracking these longer-term deficits. And that's why we have actually a lot of products beyond just the drought maps and those indicators. And we'll quickly run through those. For example, from our ANU climate data sets, we produce these short-term rainfall percentile maps. And these are relative to historic rainfall, and Kel will be showing what our current rainfall percentile map looks like in a moment. So these maps allow us to see where in New South Wales they might be experiencing above average rainfall or places that are having those rainfall deficits. We also use minimum temperature maps to assess frost days. From our EDIST model data, we have recently launched a drought forecast, giving that forward view of how conditions might change over the next 3 months. We also look at the 21-day mean soil water, just to try and capture areas that are experiencing a short-term drying or wetting. We also have remotely sensed data that we use for independent verification. So like the 1-month farm water availability map on the top, or the NDVI, the sort of normalized difference vegetation index, which tracks average plant greenness. So there's a few different bits and pieces that we can use to help verify what our drought maps are showing. So now I'm going to hand it over to Kel, who's going to talk about the tools and products that are available to producers. Thanks, Kel.
Great, thanks, Kim. So what we're going to try and do is run through some of the products, tools, and the information available from EDIS. So we're looking at those outputs on that sort of left-hand side of the diagram that Kim presented earlier. It's looking at how we can use those. So collectively, we do this with a suite of tools, which we collectively put under the Seasonal Conditions Monitoring Program. So we have the State Seasonal Update, the Combined Drought Indicator, and Farm Tracker mobile app for on-ground reporting. And we also have a data provision service through our Seasonal Conditions Information Portal, where you can actually go in and download and access some of the most of the data that we generate through our EDIS program. So we've been through a lot of the science and some of the technical information which has been covered. So this is more of a practical look at how to get these tools and how to get the most from them. So starting with the SSU, the picture on the left there is the new website. It's undergone significant updates and changes to make the information more accessible and improve that experience and to be able to find it. So what we've done is we've tried to come up with a layout that means you can look for exactly what you need to find within 1 to 2 mouse clicks. And I tried to arrange it in a logical way. So we've got menus across the top, we've got drop-down menus on the side, as well as a card layout for each page. So you just basically can go in and click through quite quickly to see what you want to find. Diagram on the right is kind of a schematic about, the range of information that's actually available there for you. So current conditions, for example, it's got the New South Wales summary, combined drought indicator, and then goes into those underlying indicators that Kim referred to earlier. Our interactive CDI map provides free access to current and historical drought information at the New South Wales parish level. So that's approximately 10 to 20 farms to try and classify seasonal conditions and drought in New South Wales. And as Kim outlined earlier, it combines that, those indicators for rainfall, soil water, and plant growth, and gives us that, better picture of what's happening beyond just rainfall deficits. The map's now fully integrated and updates daily to display the latest information that we've got and the latest CDI values across New South Wales. It's gone through some significant upgrades, so there's now a search function where you can simply type in a town or an actual address, and the map will zoom to the location you want and display the data for the parish that location is in. And then you can also see the underlying drought indicators in a chart form below the map as well. So what we've done is try to put everything in one place, make it easier for you to interact with. These charts are fully interactive as well, so you can select different time periods, turn indicators on and off, and get a real feel for what's happening with the trends for those underlying indicators at that particular location. I'm going to try and talk about that in a little bit more detail as well. We've then got Farm Tracker. It went through some upgrades of its own. It's a very simple mobile app that allows you to track seasonal conditional changes on your own farm over time. It's free to download and works on both Android and Apple. And you can create a series of reports. So there's 2 screenshots there that I've got as well, which are a couple of screenshots from the reporting section. It's a really simple scroll form where you can just select from the drop-down menu the responses that you want. You can attach a photo, which I think is a really, really powerful and important tool that you can use then to look at how a location has possibly changed over time. And all of those reports compile into a central database. So as an administrator of the system, it's not publicly available. We can go in and have a look at what Farm Tracker reports for a particular location have been like and what data there is in there, and see how that kind of relates to our systems and whether, you know, the CDI and the underlying indicators are giving us that better feel for what's actually happening on the ground. So it's a really useful, simple, free tool for anyone to use. So I've got this concept of keeping a record and coming back to it. So what's going to happen kind of from this point on for the next few sections is we're going to focus on a particular area or a particular location. And if you're looking at the slides carefully, just keep an eye out for the yellow star or a red circle. That's the reference point for the location that we're talking about today, which is just northeast of Dubbo. So this is actually one of our seasonal conditioning monitoring sites. We have half a dozen of these in New South Wales. And these are the farmer tracker reports that the producer's been sending us or doing every month. So here's what I mean by that visual record of what's been happening on that particular site over a period of time from August last year through to May this year. And like I said, using these time series, we can then start to get a feel for looking at the trends of those underlying indicators and those thresholds that Kim referred to, the 5, the 30 and the 50, to see how this relates to the conditions on the ground. And this time series shows how each of those individual indicators, which determine the CDI, like Kim mentioned, track over time. So for me, sitting in the office, I've now got this visual link with these set of photos. I've got an underlying time series that I can look at. And if, you know, from your perspective, looking at it on your own farm, you're looking at those trends, looking at how those indicators are tracking over time. Remembering that, you know, the 50th percentile is kind of median conditions where anything 50 and above is that non-drought category. So you can see from this time series chart that the indicators were quite high, sort of mid-2023, and then started to decline back to median conditions, and then slipped into a drought period for a little while, and then has gradually moved back into recovery, and has kind of sat in that sort of non-drought period for quite a period of time. So that's, you know, I can look at that. I can look at a time series chart, try and get a feel for what the conditions are like on ground by simply looking at our information. But having that time series, having those locations where we can see those points, reference points in time, where the producer's done these reports for us, and then try and make that visual link and that data link or that information link. So there's some real power in being able to make the link between what's happening with conditions on ground and using our data to help you try and make that link as well. Going to slip into current conditions now. So what we've been seeing for the last little while. So I'm going to run through, starting with things at the end of May 2025. So that was That was our combined drought indicator map, or our statewide picture at the end of May. A few weeks later, you can see some subtle changes there, but we're still seeing a lot of variability across the state and a range of management considerations, for all producers in the state at this time. You can see the little yellow star up there just near Burke. That's where we're focusing on when we talk through a lot of this tonight. So the production outlook for sort of the northern part of the state is still pretty positive. There was recent rainfall that provided further confidence for many inland locations, particularly the tablelands in the northwest. There's still a lot of challenges, as we well know, due to continued rainfall for other locations along the east coast, with lots of waterlogging. There was some severe flooding around the sort of mid-north coast Hunter, which is really impacting things like feed availability, and there's a lot of livestock management considerations there. Producers that have recently been flooded in May have got a pretty long recovery window, considering now that we're in winter. The southern part of the state, as you can see, we've still got those drought conditions, which are still continuing to create many challenges for producers. But again, there's been some recent rainfall, which has been welcome for many areas, giving a little bit of confidence. Reports that we're getting sowing conditions continues for many areas, looking at varieties, crop types, and, input cross decisions, this late in the season. But that feed situation is still a concern through winter, with ongoing drought management studies for many livestock producers, with supplementary feeding continuing, and producers carefully monitoring feed reserves and their stock numbers. So within our team, we're still closely watching those areas, and producers, they would be continuing to watch forecasts to see if those follow-up rainfall continues. If we zoom to the west of the state and get a little bit of a tighter look in around this region and where our focus area is tonight, majority of the region still in non-drought, so that means the underlying indicators are all sitting around or just above that 50th percentile. Seeing really good conditions around Ivanhoe, Cobar and other locations with sort of rainfall that has fallen through the year. But we're continuing to monitor those areas currently in the drought affected category, and many locations, particularly in the southwest of this region, have been experiencing rainfall deficits for some time. So at this point, we're in around, when this map was produced around the 12th of June, about 25% of New South Wales is in one of the CDI drought categories. So a little bit of a look at rainfall. We've got monthly rainfall on the left and year-to-date rainfall on the right. So for the first couple of weeks of June, we've seen widespread but variable totals to date, sort of that 5 to 10 mils for our allocation up near Burke for this month. But for the year to date, which is the map on the right, it's sort of been in that 100 to 200 mils. So, and regions, there's still some regions with some really strong outlooks, particularly in the tablelands, northwest and central west, as I said. And you can kind of get a feel for that when you look at some of those year-to-date rainfall totals, particularly west of the ranges. So how does this compare to median rainfall? So the map on the left is the one I've just shown you, which was the year-to-date rainfall from the previous slide. I think it makes sense to try and look at these together. So the map on the right is our year-to-date percentile map. So what we're showing is whether the rainfall has been above or below median. The bluer colours show where rainfall has been above what is normally expected, and the orange or red colours show where it's below or where the deficits are. What we're doing to produce this map is we're comparing this time period, so that's the year to date, 1 Jan to 12th June, against our baseline of 1980 to 2020, and then ranking that again on a scale of 0 to 100. So the higher you get to 100, they're the highest on record for the records that we have. So you can see those long-term rainfall deficits in the Murray Riverina sneaking up into sort of southern parts of the central west and then around into western. So that's kind of a part of the puzzle of what's been driving some of that long-term drought conditions that we're seeing in parts of the state. For our area up there in Burke, it's sort of sitting roughly around that sort of 30 to 40%, 30 to the 40th percentile in terms of rainfall percentiles for this time of the year. Kim mentioned NDVI and SWAP 21. So these are the the current maps. The map on the left obviously is NDVI for the period March to May this year, and SWOT 21 is that short 21-day soil water indicator for the 21 days up to the 12th of June. So you can see how some areas are sort of reaching that 100% of maximum soil water capacity. With other areas, it's much lower. So the figure is not showing the soil water what is compared to normal. It's showing how much soil water there is compared to what it can hold when it is completely saturated. So the closer you get to 100, the closer you're getting to the maximum soil water capacity that soil can hold. For our area up near Burke, it's somewhere around that sort of 20 to 30% for this 21-day period. So I'll leave it there, and we're going to flip over to Jen now, who's going to run through the forecasts and the outlooks for us.
Thanks for that, Kel. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the upcoming conditions over the next few months, including a little bit of background information on how to interpret the seasonal forecast. So next slide, Kel. So the Bureau of Meteorology releases its 3-month outlooks for rainfall and temperature fortnightly. The map on the left here is the chance of receiving above median rainfall over the July to September period, with the scale for this period mapped on the right. So the rainfall outlook here is indicating that the chance for above median rainfall ranges from about 50-50, those white colors in the south and along the north coast, to about 70% elsewhere in the state. Now at that location near Burke, we're seeing that higher 65 to 70% chance of exceeding median rainfall. But it is important to remember that this map is not telling us how much rain we're going to get or how much above median, but it's actually just the probability that we are going to get above median rainfall. So to help visualize this, next slide, please, Kel. This is a figure that is showing a theoretical forecast. So a forecast model is run a number of times to capture this range in likely conditions. So all these squiggly blue lines are representing those different runs of the model. So on the left, you have the first day of the forecast, and you can see that all these squiggly lines aren't starting at exactly the same point. There's a bit of spread to represent some minor variations in the starting conditions. And at the right, which is sometime in the future, let's say 3 months ahead, you have the final outcomes of all of these model runs. So most of the forecast runs are clustering on some answer in the center, but you have a few stragglers above and below that. And this represents all the range of possible outcomes that the model is predicting with its multiple runs. So how does this information translate back to the information on the probability of exceeding median maps? What those maps are saying is this. This is the usual rainfall that we get at this time of year, the historical median. And now what percentage of the model runs are above and below that historical median? So if 70% of those runs are landing above the median, you have a higher chance of exceeding median rainfall, and you'll have those bluer colors on the rainfall outlook maps. However, there were still 30% of those runs that were below median, and these are still realistic possible scenarios that can happen. And if they do happen, the forecast wasn't wrong. It did predict that range of possibilities. It was just a bit less likely for it to be below median. So now coming back to our temperature outlooks, these are the temperature outlooks for the next 3 months. They work the same way as the rainfall outlooks. So these red colors mean that more of the model runs are predicting warmer than median temperatures over cooler than median temperatures. So for maximum temperature, there is a bit of spread, with the south having a very high chance of warmer than median temperatures, but that likelihood is decreasing a little bit as we move towards the north. So near Burke, we're just around that 60% chance of exceeding maximum temperature, median maximum temperature threshold. Now, on the other hand, minimum temperature, they're way more likely, highly likely to be warmer than average across the state, including at Burke, where there's over 80% likelihood of warmer than average nights. Now, I've just shown a snapshot of the information available. There's a lot more information and more climate statistics available on the Bureau's website. Things like the chance of extreme temperatures, extreme rainfall, and there's also ways to click around and explore the data at a local level. And the Bureau have also recently released these new video explainers about how you can use some of these products. So if you want to know more, I do encourage people to visit the Bureau of Meteorology's Outlook website and have a look around and explore some of the data there. It's a very useful resource. It's also useful to know that in addition to the Bureau's outlooks, there are about a dozen or so international models that work roughly the same way as the Bureau's. And you can use whichever you want of these or all of them. None of them are 100% accurate. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. So it's not really about picking and choosing your favorite model. Ideally, what we want to see is that all the models are predicting similar patterns, which is kind of what we're seeing here with that chance above median rainfall. They're all kind of showing a higher likelihood of above median rainfall, except for maybe one. And the more that are showing those similar patterns, the more confident you can be on that forecast. Now, one of the things that none of these models or these products are telling you is whether that predicted rainfall is enough to lift a region out of long-term deficits or drought. But if we know the current drought status, which we do, and we have a reasonable estimate of the range of potential rainfall, then we can have a drought forecast. So our latest service, released late last year, is an integration of the Bureau's forecast into our own drought modeling framework, EDIS, to predict the most likely drought status for 3 months ahead using the combined drought indicator. So the drought forecast is run fortnightly, and it's included in the state seasonal update, and it consists of a 4-map panel. So I'm going to run through that panel here using the most recent forecast. So first we have the current CDI map that Kel described a moment ago. And so that's so we can compare the current forecast with the upcoming conditions, with the current conditions. So then we have the forecast. So that's what the most likely CDI is going to be for 3 months ahead, in this case for the end of August. And what we can see in this forecast is an expansion of drought conditions into central and western New South Wales out to the end of August, while the intensity of drought conditions in the eastern Riverina and Murray may ease slightly. And that site near Burke is expected to transition into drought affected by end of August. But the third map looks at how confident we are in this forecast, because like I said, 99 runs of this forecast. And this is the ensemble or model agreement map, which looks at that certainty. So like in the theoretical forecast I showed, we do run this model 99 times. And this map is showing how well those runs are agreeing on the predicted CDI category at any given location. So the darker the blue, the more models agree on the category. The lighter the blue, the more spread of possible outcomes across those 5 CDI categories. And the final map is the past skill map. And it describes how closely past forecasts for this period matched what actually happened. If the model has consistently provided accurate predictions, there's more confidence in its current output. However, if the past skill is low, it might suggest a need for more caution in interpreting the forecast, especially when ensemble agreement is also low. So together, these 2 maps describe the confidence in the forecast. And now in this forecast, in the most recent forecast, there is very high ensemble agreement in the eastern part of the state, along with moderate to high skill for this time of year. So we can feel a bit more confident about the drought forecast for that region. Now in the western part of the state, it's a bit more of a mixed story with moderate ensemble agreement, meaning 50 to 75% agreement on the category, but pretty low skill across much of the western part of the state, which is not unusual for this time of year, but means that the forecast in the West should be used cautiously and continuously monitored. Oops. Sorry, was there?
All good, I think.
All good? Yeah. So before we wrap up, just wanted to take a brief interlude to go over interpreting a short-term rainfall forecast. because everything we've talked about in the last few slides has been related to long-term seasonal forecasts. But a lot of people here do check their short-term weather daily. And by short-term, I'm talking about your favorite forecast for the next few, talking about your forecast for the next few days to a week, the one you usually see in your favorite weather app. So maybe that's Elders, maybe that's the bureaus, maybe that's Weather Zone. Take your pick. It's that one that you look at to see what's going on for the next few days. So no matter which of these you are looking at, you're almost always going to be provided with enough information to answer these two questions. Will it rain tomorrow or today, tomorrow, the day after? And if it does, how much rain is likely to occur? So in this example, we're seeing two pieces of rainfall information, the number 80% and 10 to 20 mil. Now, what does this mean? So what it doesn't mean is this. 80%, it does not mean I have an 80% chance of getting 10 to 20 mil. What is the right answer? So we're going to break it down into those two questions. Will it rain today? According to this, possibly, even probably. The correct interpretation is that there is an 80% chance of receiving rain, some rain, any rain, just enough for it to register in a rain gauge. So the minimum amount is 0.2 millimeters that has to be occurring for it to be considered a rain day. So this is saying there's an 80% chance that there will be at least 0.2 millimeters of rain in the gauge. Now, how much rain? Here we need to think a little bit differently. So now we're not ignoring the 80% and we're just looking at that range, that 10 to 20 millimeter range. So when you're looking at this, the confidence or the likelihood in the amount of rain decreases as the amount increases. So the standard way to interpret this is that there is a 75% chance of at least 10 mil and only a 25% chance of that higher number of that 20 mil range. So the higher the amount number, the less likely it is to occur. Now, regardless of which source you're using for your rainfall forecast, they generally follow this similar approach. The take-home message is you're still dealing with a game of probability, actually two games of probability, the chance of it raining, but also how much you're going to get. So I hope that provides a bit of clarity about short-term and long-term forecasts. And with that, I will hand it back to Kel to finish us off.
Hey, Jen, I'm actually just going to jump in here before Kel gets started because we have a question in the chat that will be that I reckon that we should throw out there. So the question is just asking, oh God, no, I've lost it. There it is. So we have a question about some clarification around the accuracy of the CDI across the far western New South Wales region. This particular person has just made a comment about how that the on-ground conditions appear to be quite different to what the actual CDI is currently presenting. And this particular person is just saying that they feel like the conditions are actually quite worse than what is being portrayed. So are you able to make any comments around the accuracy and perhaps what some of the limitations or stuff that are in the CDI that people could be mindful of that might be creating this dissonance between what we're seeing on ground and what might be in the CDI?
Yeah, so I think Kim mentioned a few of the limitations before. There is more data sparsity in the West. The data set we use does try to take in topography, but it is possible that you can have some rain shadows here and there. If their location is really looking that much different from what we are showing, then we really encourage that person to log a farm tracker report with us or get in touch with us, because that does help us validate our data and check if there are issues. Sometimes, sorry, go ahead, Kim.
Cool. Sorry about before, my mic was playing up. Yeah, the model also can't take into account different management practices as well, or grazing pressures, say from kangaroos, etc. So there is difficulty in accounting for those external factors that are just far too difficult to model. Again, that's why we do use some of those short-term indicators as well, like the NDVI, different things like that, just to look at what else is happening across that area.
I'd be very interested to know if the time series at that person's location reflects some of the changes they might be seeing. So maybe it hasn't hit the drought category yet, but maybe the trend is going in that direction. So that's something to look at. So yeah, like we said, there's a bit of delay. So I encourage using kind of the different sources we have to try and validate what's going on.
I might just add quickly there, Jen, that's an important point, is to not only to look at the CDI as that whole snapshot of the state, but to drill into that underlying data and have a look at the time series for your location. And like Jen said, being able to try and make that link between how those indicators are trending and what those on-ground conditions are starting to look like. And I think most of the time you'll start to see a tighter correlation or a better correlation between the way the indicators are tracking and what those on-ground conditions might be like, without knowing the particular location to look at tonight. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. We do have extra questions, but I might leave them until the end so that you guys can get through your presentation.
Sure. Thanks, Jess. Yeah, so we'll go on and just have a quick run through some decisions and considerations. So the concept that I'm trying to paint here is that when we deliver workshops like this, we try and encourage, the use of a range and a suite of tools together around that concept of better decision making. So in this example here, just got a series of images. On the top right, I've got a mobile phone sitting there. And as Jen mentioned, those short-term weather forecasts where you're looking at your favourite app to make some sort of operational decisions. So is it going to rain tomorrow? Is it going to rain the next day? Have I got time to do sowing? When will I be spraying? Have I got a shed sheep if we're going to be shearing? The bomb forecast or other forecasting tools, like Jen said, there's lots out there to try and get a picture. That's the picture on the bottom right, to try and get a picture of what certain conditions will be like a little bit longer term. So we're making longer term decisions around crop variety, maybe planting dates, or livestock purchases or sales, for example. So that longer sort of 3 months sort of decision framework. I regularly subscribe to the SSU as a user, and I get that update every month. What I didn't mention was that if you subscribe, an email will come to your inbox once a month with a sort of a snapshot of conditions with a whole heap of links in it, which will take you back to the website so that you've got that sort of monthly reminder to go and look at some of the information that we're providing there. Farm Tracker, like we've mentioned, I feel it's a really powerful way to get local information and data for your own farm. It's a great reference for historical information, not only today's, and select multiple areas on the farm that are representative of things like soil type or topography or different land uses, and have multiple reports across your property. The app allows you to do that by naming different paddocks, different sites, and having everywhere geotagged. And finally, we've had a bit of a discussion about the CDI, but having a look at those underlying parish time series for your location and matching those seasonal condition indicators to all of the other information can really help, we think, making decisions, whether it's feeding, sowing, or some other stock management examples. So what I want you to do is think about how that would have worked in a practical sense prior to the last drought that you experienced. So in reference to the site that we went through tonight, there's all the information that we've kind of presented, and what I've done then is I've gone through and sort of given you what the sort of data is suggesting our information is giving you. So the area up there near Burke was in that non-drought category, so the indicators are above 50%. It's received a small amount of rainfall for June, sort of 5 to 10. The tick or the cross, is that good or bad in your mind? The soil water is at that 20 to 30%. Rainfall is slightly below median for the year to date. The CDO indicators are trending down. Does that mean there's a decline in conditions? Although it has been in non-drought for several months, that area. As Jen went through with a longer term forecast, we're likely to see above median rain for this 3-month period, but still warmer temperatures over winter. The forecast, though, the drought forecast does suggest that that location is likely to enter a drought affected category within the next 3 months or by the end of August. And the NDVI for that sort of March to May period was above average. So some questions to kind of think about. If that was your property, what would you be thinking about now? What decisions do you think you might need to make going forward? And where you're going to get, when you need to make that decision? And thinking a little bit more deeper in that local context in terms of actual land management there, managing crop inputs, doing pasture and livestock assessments, checking water regularly. What's your financial capacity for a 3-month plan or a longer plan if you have to make some decisions soon? What's your attitude or your profile, your attitude to risk? Somebody looking at that information tonight for that location or for their own farm, if that was an example for your property, would possibly make quite a different decision to the neighbour based on their attitude to risk. Planning is planning, but having something in place is far better than not. So making sure you've got all of those kind of things started to mapped out and thinking about it, so you can have a better opportunity to make a decision a little earlier than possibly not. So yeah, that's the idea of trying to tie all those things together, draw your information from multiple sources as well as your own land management knowledge, your own enterprise knowledge, and pulling those strings of the bow together. So that kind of brings us to the close. We'll send this out. I think it's just a list of all the references that we went through tonight, so you can find them easily. All the web links to everything that we talked about tonight. So just quickly before we go to Q&A, just a thank you from everyone on the team for the opportunity to come along tonight and give you hopefully a little bit better insight into some of the work that we do in the seasonal conditions monitoring program.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kim, Kel and Jen. This has been a great presentation today. We do have a few questions that have come through, and I have a couple of questions I'd love to ask as well. The one question that we do have that's come through from the audience is, so given some of the rainfall across the southern region over the last couple of weeks, but also acknowledging that the growth season is past it for many, how can we expect to see those falls represented in the CDI, or will they not be seen as such in the map?
I can grab that one.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, that's a great question, because we were watching those falls with a lot of interest too, wondering what it was going to do. And, we're monitoring those underlying indicators, and we were starting to see this uptick in the rainfall indicator in some of those places that got those rains. But what wasn't moving was the plant growth indicator. That hit the nail on the head. That growth season is just not there. The temperatures aren't there. So even while the rainfall index is recovering, the other indicators are not recovering to a point where we're going to see that change in the CDI category.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense with that. You guys have obviously brought up the farm data tracker, and that's where another question has come from. That data, if a farmer uses the farm tracker, is that kept private, like just between the farmer and the app, or is it then, or if you use the app, is it free to use by the DPI, or is it opt-in? So just give us a little bit of details around sort of how the data that's entered from farmers into the farm data tracker is used, if you could.
Yep, I might take that one, see how I go. Or Kim, you look like you're keen, but see how we go.
I was typing, but go for it about that.
Yeah, so the app meets all of its the department's privacy laws. So when you register, you have to register through an email and a password. So the data can only be seen by you and an administrator from the farm tracker system, which is one of us. So one of the three of us are the only administrators that can see the data once you log a farm tracker report. So when I show that example of all of those photos from that site at Burke, that's that producer submitting those farm tracker reports, me then logging in as an administrator and being able to see the reports across the state so that I can get a better insight of what people are seeing on the ground, but nobody else can actually see your data or your information. It's only whatever you've submitted in and locked in the farm tracker app for you, and only us with our administrator access. So we are kind of, in a way, using some of that information to cross-check and reference particular sites in the state if we do have farm tracker reports from that location.
We certainly do. We can provide a more regional view of farm tracker information up through to the minister. So we do report to our executive every week at the moment. But again, like Cal said, we don't share your data, particular farm, but we can talk more about, we're getting some reports in from the Burke region saying this, just so there is more of an awareness going up through our lines.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you for providing some clarity around that stuff. I have just thrown up our slide, which is a QR code to our post-event survey. If you've joined on your desktop, it's super easy now for you to whip out your phone and scan the QR code. Again, please, any feedback that you can give us about tonight's webinar is greatly appreciated. I do have another couple questions that I'd like to throw out there. Questions that I've gathered from landholders and other community groups recently in the last couple months. So with the CDI and some of the other tools, can anyone sort of shed a bit of light on how different levels of industry are using these tools and this data, and potentially or what they are using this information for across the CDI or other forecast tools?
We cover so many different people, I guess, through government, which was the program was actually originally developed for. It is used for knowledge, understanding, policy. Just, it's one of the tools, it's one of the pieces of evidence that can be used with governments to just get that broader picture and help with planning. We have chats with lots of people on all sorts of different uses. Rural Financial Counselling Service have been using our tools as well, particularly those time series charts, just to really, when they have those chats with their clients, just to talk about their conditions, looking at the trends, overlaying some of that data, particularly looking back in time and what's been happening. We work quite closely, and it's part of the comment in the chat from Lachlan. We do work quite closely with LLS2 and LLS staff. We provide monthly briefings to all LLS staff about the current conditions, and they provide us information about what's happening on the ground. But LLS is certainly across all of these tools and use them quite regularly when they go out and deal and talk to people on the ground. Lots of different uses.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And it might be a little bit to the side of what we've been talking about tonight, but you brought up something that piqued my interest, which was the farm water availability chart that you guys have, and you I know you had something about independent on top of it. Can you just shed a bit more light onto that particular map? Because I know that farm water is something that across the southern region and the far western region is quite an issue at the moment. So can you guys describe that map a bit more and how that can be used potentially?
Yeah, sure, I'll take that one. So when we say independent, what we mean is a lot of the other products rely on the climate data or some version of the climate data that's come out of the model, but this is a completely independent data source. It's not modeled, it's remote sensing, so it's satellite based. So this is using the Landsat satellite that goes around taking pictures of the Earth, and we can actually look at these images and extract things like water information. And when I say we, I should give the credit to Geoscience Australia, as they're the ones who have actually done a lot of the work curating this imagery and creating these algorithms. So we've worked with them using their water detection from space data to basically look for water bodies. They've kind of defined the water bodies across the state, and then they can compare that to the last 40 years, give or take, to see how full or empty, basically how many wet pixels there are. It's not, I shouldn't say full or empty because it's just surface area. But you can see which pixels are wet, and if there are less wet, if there's less wet area than there has been previously, you'd probably say that water body is a little less full than it has previously been.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, because I came across that map a few months ago and I was like, oh, I wish I knew how to read that a bit better. But thank you for clarifying that, Jen. That's great. All right, so we are pretty much at stumps, guys. I don't have any more questions sitting in the chat. I'll give you a couple more minutes to throw any questions out there that you would like, though. Please take a moment again to complete our survey. Again, so thank you everyone for coming along and attending this evening. Thank you to the Climate Applications team for coming along and joining us on this webinar. If you are interested in any future webinars that we have coming up, we do have 2 webinars on agistment next week on I believe it is the 24th and 25th. So on the 24th, we are going to be looking at agistment in focus, markets, margins, and management, weighing up agistment. And on the 25th, we will be looking at the fine print and fence lines, getting agistment right. And NISA will be sending out a link to register to those webinars with any supporting materials from this evening's presentation to everyone who registered. As I said, we will also be posting a recording of this webinar on the Local Land Services YouTube at a later date when we're all wrapped up. If anyone doesn't have any more closing comments, I will stop sharing and we can probably all head off.
Sounds good. Excellent. Thanks again, Jess, for having us all